to this nonsense until the elite just can't handle this shit. Sick of living life in utter madness. So sick of them treating us like maggots. Look at textbooks taught in classes. Do some research, nothing matches. Then they start waving their Hollywood wands. No sign of a brain because all of it's gone. That's where they wanted you at all along. Stuff that you think you know, all of it's wrong. These people stay lying, even though most ain't buying the mainstream manipulation, but still they stay trying. Look what happened on 9/11. Look what happened at Sandy Hook. These fancy crooks write lies as history in their fancy books. In debt, your payments fast due. Your life just races.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Flat Earth Podcast. I'm Curious Jay, alongside me, Dave from deep inside the rabbit hole. Glad you could join us once again for an hour or so of Flat Earth audio. Coming up later in the show, part 2 of our interview with ODD and our discussion of 21 questions. Dave, what's happening this week?
Hey, man, thank God we have a part 2, because the ending last week left everybody hanging. Like, what the heck is going on, Jay?
Yeah, I know. I've got a note to apologize early on in the show for the abrupt ending of last week's episode. It was one of those late nights I was editing and had been working on it for quite some time and was in a hurry to post it. And I don't remember if I had an intention to put something right there, like a little outro or whatever, and forgot, or if I just was so tired that I said, you know what, it's fine. Either way, sorry about that.
I'm docking your pay for 2 weeks.
That's right. Fine me, put it against my paycheck. But we were talking to Jaron earlier today, and he said, what was up with the ending of the last week's show? It just went off. And so, yeah, sorry about that. My bad. Won't happen again. I'll give some sort of indication that the show is ending.
So what is new in Flat Earth this week? What do you got?
Well, there's a lot new, as always. Besides the crappy ending for last week, I think the next thing I had written down to bring up was Karen from the Sun and Moon Project pointed out the difficulty in refueling when it comes to jets, mid-air refueling.
Yeah, she actually was looking at an old Paul Sandu, I think that's his name. Paul Sandu did a in-depth piece on how hard it is to do refueling of jet fighters from a tanker. Those things are going, I think, between 300 and 400 miles an hour, and they're just trying to connect it's called a soft docking. So it's a loose hose that goes in. It goes into a fitting, and they have so many issues. It's so difficult. Meanwhile, if you look at the guys doing it, the guy that's flying the pilots that are flying the plane, both planes, and then the guy that's flying the hose, the amount of tension and focus they have. Meanwhile, they go and show the Soyuz or the space shuttle connecting to the ISS. This, giant thing is coming into this ridiculous, lanky, unstructured space station. If you're going to build a space station, you're not going to build it like they built it, supposedly. And it's coming in, and they're just jovial. This giant machine's coming in, and it's going to connect to this machine, where the slightest crack or bump could kill everybody, and it's traveling at 17,500 miles per hour. But the Globers will say, well, they're both going 17,500 miles per hour, so they cancel each other out.
Yeah, but they're still moving, pal.
Absolutely.
I mean, they're still moving, and you're going to feel that movement if you get anything wrong. I mean, but you're right. They show it, and they indicate it as being, just as easy as you and I parking a car at the shopping mall parking lot. They make it look that simple.
The thing about the International Fake Station is it's these long, lengthy, connections or tubes or whatever. It's not like a triangle or a circle where I'll have its own structure. Just people moving around in there and pushing off the wall has to put torque on that thing. Wouldn't you think?
Oh, yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah, and then a big, this giant space shuttle is coming in, and it's going to connect at a right angle. It make any engineer that looks at this and doesn't just believe, NASA, would have to say there's no way that could ever work.
Well, it's like the idea of the fact that one of the points we wanted to bring up also was the fact that it was 15 years between the first satellite and then the 6 trips to the moon, right? And when you're talking about all of this, I mean, they have the best track record of any technological advance anywhere. And I think I may have said this on the show before when we were talking to like Kevin the teacher. But I mean, think about it. The first car didn't work. The first train didn't work. The first plane crashed. The first submarine, it didn't work. You know, anytime you've got a massive leap in transportation technology, it fails. And most of the time, it fails many, many times until it's finally gotten right. However, when it comes to the Sputnik and the first moon trips, we got it right every single time the first time.
It's amazing. Nobody's died in space, right? In any of the space programs.
Well, unless you would go with the Challenger deal where it landed. I mean, it supposedly blew up prior to getting to space.
I guess if you're buying the space program as real, then you can say people died.
Exactly.
And also the launch pad of the Apollo.
Yes. And that's the funny thing is the Apollo launch pad stuff that kept blowing up. You know, when they kept crashing the lunar module when they would try it, that I believe when they were doing the test for the lunar module, you know, they were, when it was unmanned, they were crashing it. It wasn't working. I believe that was legit. Yeah. And it just goes to show you. But then they're like, okay, despite the fact that we can't get it right on Earth, we're going to go ahead and launch and try it up on the moon and just hope for the best. We're going to just knock on wood here, folks, with these, you know, 2 astronauts' lives aboard floating around the moon, which we've never been on before. And we'll just hope for the best. And lo and behold, it works. And then we go back a few months later, and a few months later, 6 trips, 3 years, you know, everything with the exception of the near disaster on the Apollo 13 goes off without a hitch. Yeah, right. Ass.
From Sputnik, the first satellite, within 15 years, we had 6 successful trips to the moon and back. That is just ridiculous.
Just ridiculous. And then over the next 50, we can't get past the ISS height?
Yeah, with all of that, you know, we've been promised, you know, hotels in space and trips around the moon.
Yeah.
Nothing.
I wonder if Paris Hilton got her money back when she bought the ticket on the Virgin Moon mission. You remember that?
Yeah, it's I can't even speak. It's just horrifying. You know, I don't believe they say, you know, Richard Branson, whoever the hell's doing it, got, you know, 700 people or what to pay, you know, $250,000. I don't know if that's true. Maybe they got some suckers to pay.
I think they got Paris Hilton.
You think that she's just not part of the elite, you know, money system?
Well, let me ask you this, Dave. Be honest here. If you were part of the elite system and we had to keep this thing under lock and key, would you tell Paris Hilton?
I don't know. I mean, she's a big distraction. People pay attention to, you know more about Paris Hilton than they do about the heliocentric model.
Well, no, I'm saying, would you tell her? Would you let her in on the big secret?
No, I don't think she knows.
Okay,
I just think that she's part of the system, you know. And
yeah. I think doesn't know it, but yeah, right. She probably is, you know, her parents and such. But yeah, I don't think she has a clue. I wouldn't trust her with the secret.
Here's another thing. Again, Jaron was showing some old space shuttle footage, and the main booster tank supposedly never falls back to Earth. The 2 external tanks, those are supposedly reused, but the main tank supposedly falls back and burns up and never hits the ground.
Wait.
So the main fuel tank,
right,
also known as the helium blimp, falls back to Earth and it burns up in the atmosphere. This is according to Jaron. I haven't double checked his information, but there's no information about that thing falling down and landing anywhere in the ocean or elsewhere. I even believe I heard him say that it supposedly burns up. And my question is, how fast could that thing actually free fall back to Earth? Because it's going 17,500 miles an hour to break away from the Earth. So it would have to be falling faster than 17,500 miles an hour. And I don't think that's possible.
Well, I wonder if the Globe's answer or the NASA answer to that would be that the 17,500 miles, when it's doing that speed at that altitude in the orbit that it's going, there's not enough air resistance. However, when it dives down even slower than that, but when it dives down into the atmosphere, that's what makes it burn up, is the friction against the atmosphere. Isn't that what they would say?
I'm sure that is exactly what they would say, because that's what I would say if I was a blind believer. I would just say that without knowing anything.
Right. They've preconditioned us with this whole burns up on the way back into the atmosphere. So I think that's probably what they would respond with. But I just think the entire orbital mechanics is laughable. I mean, I really do. Now that when you really look into it and you realize that you're falling at 17,500 miles around something, yeah, just it's funny how we just always bought it. Like orbiting. Oh, okay, orbiting, cool. And then when you look into it and you realize the ISS is falling at 17,500 miles around something, and so it's falling as fast as it's flying as fast as it falls. Good God, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah. A lot of talk about GPS. You want to talk about GPS for a little bit?
Yeah. Especially as it relates to the if they were to do GPS with satellite.
Yeah.
On a lot of flat Earth videos, you'll find the information that everyone says, well, we're using tower-based triangulation, just like we did before the so-called satellites came around. And even to this day now, people will always be quick to point out that GPS means global positioning system, not satellites.
I don't think it ever said global. It's just GPS, and I say that's ground position
or ground positioning or geo positioning.
Yeah,
could be. But you brought up, or I think the video that you watched, whatever, brought up a great point in the fact that if you were using satellites to triangulate something, you would essentially be looking at 3 satellites as 3 points, and then a point beneath that, because it is on the ground level, and the 3 points are above that. So you've basically got how do we say it before the show? Oh, the point on the Earth is too small, right?
Yeah. So let's first back up a little bit. The way triangulation works, just on the land, when you're using radio towers to triangulate, it's measuring the time the signal takes to go and come back from whatever point. And that measurement somehow can be done accurately. So I don't think that's in contention there. But if you have points on the ground that are miles apart or whatever, those angles can be calculated to figure out, if you have 3 points, exactly where something is within a few feet. But if you were using satellites that are, 250 or 500 miles in the air, and let's say you and I were on our cell phones and we're 200 yards apart, okay? Which we all know by using the GPS on our phones. I don't like using that term, but the location devices on our phone, it can show you what side of the room you are in your house.
Oh yeah, it can tell me when I turn around, left to right.
Yeah, so the angle difference from, a satellite's height from me to you, 100, 200 yards apart, that measurement is so minuscule compared to a tower that's just a couple miles away. That 100 yards would translate into a couple of degrees, but from a point in space, it would be, I don't know what
downward.
It would be a fraction of a degree. And here's the other question is, those satellites, how do they know exactly where they are? Are they moving perfectly with the Earth? Because the GPS simulations I've seen show satellites zooming all over the place. So they need to triangulate with other moving satellites or geostationary satellites to figure out where they are. Because if they move, an inch or a mile, everything changes.
Yeah. It's really kind of like we just talked about a second ago. When you stop and you think about these things, it really does show you how much wool was pulled over our eyes.
The other thing is, and we learned this with the Max Egan flight, that we were tracking Max when he was flying from Santiago to New Zealand, I think, or somewhere along that trip, where whenever his flight was out in the middle of the ocean, and we can see this on all flights, whenever a flight is more than 200 or 300 miles away from any landmass, it goes into approximation mode. There's no GPS over unpopulated areas where no radio masts are, including over, over the Amazon jungle. There's land there, but the GPS goes into approximation mode. If there were satellites that were doing the GPS, you would have coverage everywhere all the time.
Yeah. And the Southern Oceans not being able to track the planes. I've always said, I mean, if it was satellites, why would you lose a plane anywhere in the Southern Oceans?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just one ocean. It's not a bad patch. It's like, the Southern Oceans are huge, and the planes drop off between, as many of us know, between South America and Africa, between Africa and Australia, between Australia and South America, all the way around. It's just this huge basic dark spot for for quote unquote GPS tracking. And if they were using satellites for that, satellites that are going around the Earth, I mean, there would be no excuse for having that large of what do you call it? Of a dark area, right?
Correct. Think about this. What's on those satellites? What is doing all of that computing? Are there computers on there? Are they PCs? Are they Macs? What are they? And then ask yourself, have you ever seen a computer server that's in a nice air-conditioned server room, dust-free, temperature regulated, cranking away? One, it's sucking down a lot of power. Two, they don't last forever. These things never break down. They're, when they're in the sun, they're hundreds of degrees. And when they're in the cold, they're in the dark, they're way below zero.
They go from freezing to melting temperatures.
And they work perfectly off of a little solar panel. And they're able to transmit data nonstop without ever screwing up. I mean, GPS always works, your satellite TV, all the, communications that we think are going over satellite, they always work.
Well, yeah, and anyone out there who's listening who travels in any sort of pattern during their lives and goes through a dark spot on their cell phone reception, whether it's on your way to work or on the way to your house, when you go through certain areas that we call, no cell zones or whatever, the fact that it is the same day in and day out,
same spot.
Every time you go through that spot, it's a bad zone. And I'm not talking about going through a tunnel. I'm talking about just being on a highway somewhere. I'm talking about, I've used this, for example, in the past, between Baton Rouge and New Orleans, Louisiana, there's one stretch of 10 miles or so on I-10 with no tree coverage, nothing. This is on I-10 where your cell service goes out every single time for, the better part of a 10-mile stretch. You're telling me the satellites just can't get to that area?
There's a spot, clear area, again, no coverage, no air, no trees or anything on I-95. That's about 100 or 200 yards where you lose, it gets crackly. You don't always lose the call. But when I'm talking to somebody, I know exactly where they are just by the static that comes over the phone for that short period of time. I'm like, oh, you just crossed this mile marker. They're like, hey, how'd you know that? I'm like, your phone cut out for, 12 seconds.
Yep. And, so we all have to just ask ourselves, for those of you who believe that satellites play a part in this technology, or that satellites are needed for this, just stop and ask yourself, why do these things happen? Why does my cell go out in the same spot every time, day after day, year after year? Is it because the satellites can't reach? No, it's because of the towers, the way the towers are built.
Exactly.
Jimmy Jedi brought up a good point, and I think you wanted to mention it.
Yeah, Jibby was on Nathan Oakley's show. I think that's where I heard him, and he's a very interesting guy. He's up here in the Northeast with me. I haven't met him yet, but I'm looking forward to it. He's somebody, I'm not sure who did it, took some high altitude balloon video footage, took some frames out of them and cranked them up in Photoshop like they've been doing with the crank the levels up like they've been doing with the eclipse photographs. It showed some very interesting anomalies. Some people are claiming that it's showing the dome or some structure behind there. To me, it was a little weak, but it was fascinating. But taking an image from a video is probably the least quality image. So anyone out there that's doing balloon launches, Dwayne Kellum, I don't know if you listen to the show or whoever, I don't know, is anybody sending up 4K cameras on a timer that can take series of high res, high megapixel pictures? Because if we could get some high megapixel,
the megapixel,
yeah, that would be very interesting to put those into Photoshop, crank up the levels, and see what you see.
Yeah,
sound like a good idea.
Yeah, certainly. And I know what you mean by it's not like you're not saying that Jimmy Jedi's footage.
Jibby Jedi. It's Jibby Jedi.
Jimmy Jedi. Not Jimmy.
Or
But
Jimmy. I like Jimmy, actually.
actually, Jimmy Jedi would be cool. But you're not saying, oh, this is some definitive picture of the dome or whatever. But it does raise the point of we do need to try to get some photos just in case you could raise the levels and see some sort of structure as to what is.
Somebody might have taken some photos already. I just don't know. I've only seen video. It makes sense to take video when you're up there, but I think it would be very useful to get some and crank them up in Photoshop and see what we get.
Especially using the megapixel option.
The megapixel, yes.
No, it's a good point. And so if anyone out there is doing launches, check in with us once you get those 4K pictures because we'd love to see them. So somebody else brought up the point this week of the moon and Pluto and how the size and distance just doesn't match up.
Right. I've seen some science shows where they show us what the sun, the reason we can't live on Pluto is because it's so cold, and the sun from Pluto looks like a star. It looks like a big star, but still it's so far in the distance it looks like a bright star at best.
Mm-hmm.
And then they show an eclipse of Pluto eclipsing the sun from a vantage point past Pluto, where Pluto is like the size of a basketball and the sun should be the size of a match head, but they show it looking just like
our eclipse.
Just like our eclipse of the moon, eclipsing the sun with the diamond ring around the outside, which is utter nonsense. Again, the distances of seeing stars, that are suns that are trillions of miles away is just utter nonsense. If just going from the Earth to Pluto makes the sun the size of a match head, what happens when you double that distance?
Yeah. I mean, and look, folks who don't know, I'm going to go ahead and rattle these numbers off, and you'll see you don't have to be a mathematician to see the problem here. So we know that from our vantage point, when we're looking up at the moon, right? Many people know it's 240,000 miles away. The moon is supposedly 2,000 miles wide, and it just looks the same size, and we get that little ring around the moon because the sun is so far, et cetera, right? Okay, so remember that 2,000-mile moon, and it ends up being the same size as the sun with the ring. Pluto, however, the diameter of Pluto is only 1,500 miles. Let's just say we put Pluto in the place of our moon right now. Pluto stood right next to our moon, and then on the eclipse day, the moon goes in front, and then Pluto passes in front right after that. Well, you're not going to see that little diamond ring. You're going to see a huge ring because it wouldn't cover up the entire sun. However, they're telling us if we're on the other side of Pluto that it would show that ring. But guess what, folks? The distance from us to the sun is 93 million miles, as so many people know. You remember what the distance to Pluto is from the sun, Dave?
I do not. It's
4.7 billion miles. It's a 1,500-mile object that's supposedly having the same effect with the diamond ring light, but it's at 5 billion miles away. Come on.
It's just it's just laughable.
I left you speechless again.
Yeah, I'm finished with
not me. Their logic did.
Yeah, no, I get it.
It's just brutal, man. It really is. One other thing I wanted to make sure I mentioned was, our thoughts and prayers are definitely in those who were in the path of storms in the last couple months. In Houston, we have listeners in Houston. We have listeners in the Florida area, and so we hope everyone is staying safe and was, didn't suffer too much damage from Irma a week or two ago. But during all the storm watching, and I can definitely tell you guys that's a personal, heartfelt best wishes, because I was actually a victim of flooding last year in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I lost the house and the cars and everything. And so I understand what these storms are all about. And it's not cool. But I think I sent you a meme a week or two ago, right before Irma hit.
Oh, yeah. Good one.
And it's something I never even thought about. But if the Earth is a ball, in the heliocentric model, one of the things that I don't think many of us realize is that this would imply, or this would necessitate that a storm the size of Irma, so Irma was 400 miles wide. That's 20 miles of curvature.
Nope, 19.8.
I'm sorry, you're right. I stand corrected. That's 19.8 miles of curvature. If we could obtain footage of Irma from the side, that would mean that literally it is curving up and down, has the 10-mile bulge in the middle. Has anyone ever seen real images of a hurricane that appear to be curved?
How would it even spin properly? It's like
The gravity.
Gravity. The
Hello?
gravity. Yeah, gravity.
Because it doesn't realize it's curved because it's gravity. Gravity makes it think it's not curved. So therefore it behaves as if it's flat. Does that sound pretty good for a BS answer?
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. It's gravity, just gravity.
I could get a job on their team tomorrow.
Yes.
No, but seriously, like it really made me stop and go, are you kidding me? And all these photos we see or these images we see of satellite images of space from NASA of the hurricane, but we never see a curve.
Nope. We never see a curve anywhere, Jay.
Yeah. No, we sure don't. We sure don't. All right. So coming up after the break, got ODD joining us once again for part 2 of 21 questions, the Stranger's Guide to Flat Earth. Anything else before we head to a break, Dave?
No, that's it. The ODD, this was supposed to be episode 2 and 3, and I think we're at 8 and 9 now. So it's a great place. It's a great starting place and refreshing place to freshen up on your flat Earth knowledge.
Yes, and I'll make one little disclaimer. This was actually recorded about 2 weeks ago, prior to someone on Globebusters using the bird analogy. That's all I got to say. That's all I got to say. Those who listen to Globebusters and who hear this next segment with ODD, and they hear the bird analogy, they'll know what I'm talking about. All right, we'll be right back in just a second with ODD and part 2.
Following announcement has been paid for by
The Flat Earth
Podcast.
You want to leave a digital voicemail for us? Head over to theflatearthpodcast.com and click on the blue link that reads, "Got a question? Send us a message."
You can do it from your iPhone or from your computer. First time you do it on your cellular phone, you'll have to download a little app. But after that, you can leave us all kinds of messages. If you want to be anonymous, you can make up a name, make up an email address. We don't care. We just want to hear what you have to say.
We'll do our best to play or answer these questions and comments on future episodes right here on the Flat Earth Podcast. Download the SpeakPipe app and check us out at theflatearthpodcast.com.
The Flat Earth
Podcast.
If you're watching this audio on YouTube right now and you're not familiar with the world of podcasting, there's a far better way to listen to the Flat Earth Podcast each and every week.
Think of it like your TiVo or your DVR is to your television. You subscribe to whatever show that you like. Whenever a new episode comes out, it records it, downloads it, and notifies you that there's a new episode for easy listening anywhere. Another great feature on most podcast players is you could speed up if you want to hear stuff even faster, or more importantly, it has a jump back and jump forward 30 seconds so you could skip annoying announcements like this.
We're on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and so many more. If we're not on your favorite podcast app, send us a message and let us know to make sure we will be.
The Flat Earth
Podcast.
Number 10. Why is the moon upside down in the southern hemisphere?
ODD, explain it the way you did on the video.
Well, that's
Sure.
because that's not the bottom of the world. They're upside down. They're upside down.
All right.
Right, yeah, this one without visuals, well, pretty much anything without visuals is a little harder to convey. But say you're in the northern parts of the flat Earth, which is closer towards the center, right? The moon looks like it looks to us now. And if you were to go to the southern hemisphere, you're basically going underneath the moon and to the other side, but for some reason it's a mirror image of itself flipped upside down. And I don't understand a lot of, we don't really understand why it does that, but that also gives credence to the fact that the moon may not even be a sphere.
So, people say if the flat Earth was true and the moon was that close, when someone in the north is looking at it and someone in the south is looking at it, you would see more of opposite sides of it. Not the whole opposite side, but you wouldn't see the exact same face because you're moving, from one side to the other. I kind of think of it like a television. When you see someone on a TV looking at you, you can move across to the other side of the room and they're still looking at you. It's the same picture. They're still looking at you. So now take that. Well, don't the way the way to visualize why it's upside down is think about your biggest room and put a smiley face on the ceiling and go to one end of the room and look at the smiley face. And now walk under the smiley face to the other side of the room. Smiley face is over the equator, and look at the smiley face. It's now upside down.
Yep. I use that same example. I use a quarter. Put a quarter up on the ceiling, and
I can't see the quarter. It's too far away.
Yeah.
I can't tell if it's
a very large quarter. A very large quarter. Yeah, you're right. But that's a good way to say it. The smiley face. I like that better. I'm stealing that.
Or even just an arrow. Just have an arrow pointing one way, and then go. Look at it from one end of the room. It's pointing away from you. Look at it from the other. It's pointing towards you.
Yeah. As far as the people who question what sections you should see of it and that sort of thing, could the moon also be like we talked about with the sun? Could it be a projection that is something that's manifested for us locally? You know what I mean?
Sure, even personally.
Still a lot to learn, just like the sun, I think, with the moon. I think the moon has so many things that are just anomalous and confusing about it.
Yeah, the fact that we know there's no curvature and we live on a plane, and we go from one side of the moon to the other, we go under it, and it just flips. So that definitely shows us that we got a lot to learn about the moon, and it's not a spherical object.
Yeah, I always say the only things I know about the moon is it shows up when it's supposed to, and it's not a big gray rock that we landed on 50 years ago.
I heard somebody recently compare the moon to a rainbow, where when you go to try to find the end of the rainbow, it moves. As you move, it moves. And somebody looking at that rainbow from another area sees the rainbow in a different position. Perhaps the moon is, the moon and the sun, we see it the same way.
Yeah, my kids always say it best. They're very young, and since they were like 3, they've said when they look out the car window and they see the moon, they say, "Look, the moon's following us again."
I was upset that I ever believed that as a child, and now I'm upset that I gave up that belief because now I believe it again. Full circle.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Maybe even us, we can't get rid of the indoctrination on certain things, and we just need to go back to when we were 3 or 4.
When we were little kids, we believed that the moon's following us. Then we realized that's silly, and now we realize no, it's not silly.
That's why they get you so early.
Yeah, that's right. What a journey this is. Oh my God.
Yeah.
All right, what's next?
Number 11. What about seasons? Another one of my favorites. One of you guys go first.
Okay. Yeah. Let me just drop my favorite. It comes right from the Gleason's map. Because, again, we don't know all this stuff, but to me, this is the best answer. And on the Gleason's map, in the bottom corners, it tells you how seasons work. And these are guys from the 1800s. And they basically say that the Tropic of Cancer is in the northern hemisphere, and the sun spins around, or it goes in an orbit or a circuit around the northern hemisphere. And as the seasons are shifting from summer to winter, it's basically widening until the sun is on a path around the widest part of the flat Earth, and in which time it's winter for us, and the sun is going around the Tropic of Capricorn. And then it just kind of shifts back and forth in that way, where it's going from the northern to the southern, widening and tightening its spiral circles. And that's why it changes so much for us. Go ahead and answer that.
So, you know what I say to this one? My first instinctual reaction when someone asks me about the seasons is not to even give them an answer on the flat Earth seasons. I'm prepared to go with the, it's rotating above the plane and it's going in circles and it goes up and down throughout the year, which makes total sense. But the first thing I tell them is, yeah, what about the seasons? In fact, what about the seasons on a globe? Do you realize how little sense that actually makes? And I asked them, we were all taught that the reason we experience summer in the northern hemisphere is due to what? And, most people will catch on and say, the tilt? Yeah, okay, the tilt. So because we're tilted at 23 degrees, a city like Atlanta will go from temperatures of 20 to 30 degrees to 90 to 100 degrees because of a 23-degree tilt. But what they didn't teach us in school growing up is the fact that the distance changes by 1.5 million miles. So while we are tilted towards the sun, we are also 1.5 million miles further away from said sun in the summertime than we are in the winter. So when you're asking me about the seasons, that's my chance to turn that around really quick and show them just how ludicrous the seasons are on a globe model.
So the global argument for that is, that's like a 1% difference in distance. Versus the tilt, spreads that little spotlight over a much wider area. And it's that solar radiation that is making the difference. But I completely dismiss all of that as garbage, because
I do too.
If it was that tilt of the sun, that spreading out, then on June 21st, the solstice in the summer, when the sun rises, it should be freezing outside, because that is not a 34-degree tilt or whatever. That is 1 degree off the horizon. It's the most severe spread out that sun's energy could be. But when that sun comes up on a clear day in June, you can feel that heat hit your skin and heat you up, as opposed to on December 21st, 6 months later, when the sun is at its highest point for that day. You can barely feel the heat on you. And that's not due to the angle, although the angle has a little bit to do with it. It's due to the distance.
Yeah, the distance is definitely, and my response when science says, or the globe proponent says, well, no, it's due to the angle, because the angle of the rays are coming in, it's more direct and what. Okay, show me that on an experiment. So, give me an example. Take your marshmallow, go, how you roast marshmallows on the fire? Well, sure, if you tilt it towards the fire at a close distance, then maybe the top part of the marshmallow will get warmer before the bottom. I get that. But now move it up a couple inches and tell me that getting closer to the heat is not going to make a difference. That's crazy. And then the other answer, the other response I say is that it also doesn't make sense, and I quote the Eric DeBay video where, look at the plant and animal life in the two areas. If it was truly because of the tilt, then wouldn't the southern hemisphere have the same types of climates at the same latitudes? And they don't. They're clearly different.
Good call.
I try to find as many times as I can when someone asks a question about the flat Earth, I quickly try to point out the problems on the globe side that, hey, your question about the seasons, it ought to be directed at the globe.
The Eric DeBay video about seasons, the difference in climate in the Arctic versus the Antarctic prove that we're not on a ball. And that is one of the strongest pieces of evidence out there. Because if we were on a ball that was, very stable as it is, and it goes around the sun, every 6 months, the seasons change in the northern and the southern hemisphere. The seasons, the plant life and weather should be equal at best. But because we're closer in the southern summer, it should be hotter. It should be warmer down there, or in the southern winter. Sorry, is that right? I got dyslexia.
No, I understand what you're saying, but it does. It's just like I say, that when someone asks me about the seasons, I'm like, oh, that's my favorite, because the holes in the heliocentric model as it pertains to seasons are far and many of them. You know what I mean?
But the indoctrination has people so they can't even think past what they were told. They can't, we're taught all of this stuff at an age where we don't have the courage or mental capacity to challenge it. And it is put in there as a core belief. And changing someone's core belief is very difficult.
Yeah, exactly. All right. What's the next one?
Next one, number 12. What about gravity?
Very easy,
What
right?
about
Density
gravity?
and buoyancy. I mean, don't even have to go much further than that.
I agree with you, but getting someone to say, well, okay, density and buoyancy, that could work with gravity. Why don't things go up or sideways? Why down? There has to be a force that is making things go down. You with me? And density and gravity explain why. What that force is. Is there a force? This is my opinion, and again, I'm probably wrong. There's not a mass that is creating gravity. The bigger the mass, the stronger the gravity. That can be pretty clearly demonstrated by how nothing else, really fits that model, and they have to make up dark matter to make gravity work. but perhaps there's an electrostatic charge or something that just holds things down very gently. It's a very, very weak force, and then density and gravity sort everything else out.
Kind of like I think to summarize that, I would say
Density and buoyancy. Sorry.
yeah, like in other words, density and buoyancy determines whether something floats up or falls down. But what is it that determines the up and down direction? Is that what you mean?
I think so. It's, again, this is a hard one for me to wrap my head around. Density and buoyancy make a lot more sense than gravity. Is there something that holds us down? Did you guys see that? The Go Fast video where the rocket hits something and then kind of like it looks like it's moving through liquid for a little bit? You guys saw that, right? Did you see the new one where this rocket goes up? It was just like the Go Fast rocket, but it goes and it goes into something and then it floats for 6.5 minutes. It's in like zero gravity.
I'm gonna have to watch that.
I haven't seen that.
It's quite interesting, and all the sound disappears too. So perhaps it's out of that electrostatic field that is gently pulling on things. Again, how does the helium balloon go up if there's something pulling it down? And that's where I say, well, the air is denser, and so the air is displacing it and pushing it up.
Yeah, and it's my favorite example of the what's determining the up and down direction is what Bob from Globebusters always says, like with the example of an old TV. You know how the dust would collect to the screen, the dust particles?
Yep.
Because of that electric charge, that the electrostatic charge that happens. It's not gravity, it's just it determines that to those dust particles, that TV screen is down.
A lot of people say, the flat earth doesn't work because the closer you get to the edge, it'll be pulling you towards the middle. And, you'd have to lean forward to stand up straight. And again, that's just Bill Nye, brainwashing people with utter gravitational nonsense.
Yeah. Well, one other thing I wanted to ask both of you guys about, because I don't know if I've explained this on the show or not, but another problem I find with gravity is the fact that, we talk about the speed of the Earth at the equator. It's faster because it's thicker right there, right? You with me? It's like faster there than it is at the North Pole, say.
The spin?
Yeah. Okay. Well, if that's the case, then the centrifugal force that would throw something off, like we've said before, the wet tennis ball, you spin it, the water flies off the middle, right? So the force that is created that pushes things outwards is greater.
Centripetal force.
Centripetal force.
The Globers will say that because it's going around once every 24 hours, it's nominal.
Yeah, I guess that would be their answer. I just find that gravity, to reverse that, in other words, gravity has to cancel that out to keep us on the Earth. That's what we're told, correct?
That's what we're told.
So gravity would have to have quite a selective behavior. It's got to know that the top is spinning slower than the bottom, than the middle.
One of the full-time Globers has said that he has a scale and a weight that he's traveled around the world with, and it's lighter when he's closer to the equator. I think that's utter nonsense, but it's also possible that the electrostatic force varies a little bit in different places across the plane.
I'm just on the keep it simple, stupid type thing, and I know that I weigh, my fat ass weighs 180 pounds. I'm on the Earth. I'm not floating around. I just think gravity is obviously selective in a bunch of mumbo jumbo, just based on the fact that the littlest, tiniest bugs could easily escape its grasp.
Good call.
Number 13. What about the Coriolis effect?
My favorite thing, basically, to bring up about the Coriolis effect is that a plane is really big and hefty, and it flies at a speed of, on average, 550 miles per hour. Of course, there's jets and all that stuff, but let's stick with the commercial plane. They're going 550 miles per hour. They're hunky and they're big, and they're flying around up much higher, where I feel like if you compare that to a bullet, which is really tiny and it goes on average 17,000 miles per hour, something like that, it's not affecting the plane going much slower, that's much bigger and also much higher, where the spin of the Earth would be more, it would be there a lot more for that airplane. So I try to just tell people to compare that fact that the bullet it's smaller, faster, plane, bigger, hunkier, not affected. Bullet, affected. And there's also this one video that I found, maybe I could send it to you guys. It's just called Coriolis Debunked. And it shows two water vortices going in different spins in the same camera view. The guy's filming two water vortices at the same time, both spinning in different directions.
And let me guess, it wasn't because it was a spinning ball.
It's just you wouldn't be able to have the two separate spins in the exact same space.
Right. Well, let's say it's the old paddle when you take your paddle in the water and you row it through the water really quick. On the left paddle, the little spin, the little whirlpool spins are going to go one way. On the right side of the paddle, they're going to go the other way. So if the sun and the moon are rotating above the flat Earth, and if there's anything electromagnetic at all about it, and it has an effect on the big, huge saltwater oceans, then yeah, you would see the spirals go different ways.
You've seen the video with the girl with the plate in the pool. She just pushes the plate like a paddle through the pool, and you get these opposite spinning vortexes that amazingly cast perfectly round dark shadows on the bottom of the pool, and they don't go away. They travel all the way across the pool for several minutes.
Yeah.
And I equate that to the wake of the sun and the moon, the electrostatic force of the sun and the moon going through the tropics, through and making things spin the other way by that force. And I'm also noticing, hey, if you're listening to this at a later date, this will be old news. But right now we have this major hurricane coming up. Irma, is it?
Yes, Irma.
Coming up the Atlantic coast here. Is it true that all of these major hurricanes happen when there's full moons? The biggest ones happen during full moons. I haven't gone to vet it, but I looked at a couple of them, and they were during full moons.
Well, what do you mean by what do you call like the stage of the hurricane that is related to full moon? Like when it hits landfall, or
these super hurricanes? I believe Sandy was during a full moon. Hugo. I have to check that one, but I kind of remember that being during a full moon. And to me, the moon is powered up, and it is there's a lot of energy exchange, and maybe that's how these systems get going.
It could be, but I think in order to make a correlation there, you'd have to determine, for instance, the one that's out there right now, Irma, started about a week or so ago, where they identified it out in the Atlantic. Maybe about 10 days ago. Well, by the time it hits landfall, it'll have been a system for 2 weeks.
I'm with you, but as it's building as it's building strength, the moon has been getting bigger, more and more powered up in the front of. Again, these are just things I'm throwing out there for other people to look into, because you bring something up, somebody thinks about it a little further and either disqualifies it or validates it. Yeah,
kind of like the fault line with the eclipses, right?
Yeah, I don't know what to make of all of that.
Just trying to find a way to get it into each show.
Anything else on Coriolis? ODD?
No, I think we covered it.
Okay, why can't I see infinite? Number 14. Why can't I see infinitely far? That's one of the easiest
and
ones.
I love the way on his video, on ODD's video. I love the way he explains this and lists all the different reasons over. What is it? Dust, smoke, fog. That's incredible.
Mist,
so you take this
dew,
one.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, one of my favorite things to point out to people, because unfortunately this is a question that gets asked often, and it's pretty stupid, but we gotta try to entertain and help people learn. The fact that you could look in your phone, open up the weather app, somewhere in the bottom. On mine, it's on the bottom. It tells you the visibility in your area, and it's usually on average, 10 miles or less. So something like that is upon explaining that there's, snow, rain, mist, smoke, fog, dew, all that stuff. We all know about this stuff. It exists and it's out there. Even clouds and loose clouds and stuff like that. So besides that, you could be told to your face by your weather app that you're not going to be able to see that far. Yet people always say if the earth is flat, you would be able to see from New York to Spain or something ridiculous like that.
And the other problem is, even if you could see that far, things get smaller than that angle of resolution that your eye can see. New York City is 28 miles away from where I look at it, and it's tiny. It's tiny. If it was twice that distance, I wouldn't be able to see it on a flat plane.
Yeah.
I like the example of even on a clear day, it's the equivalent of looking through one pane of glass. Well, yeah, you can see through just fine. Now put another one on top of that. Now put another one on top of that. You get 10, 15 panes of glass to look through. Things are looking pretty foggy. And the glass is all clear. We know that. The same thing with a clear day. It's still air. And when you go miles and miles of that clear air, yeah, it starts to diminish what you can see.
Sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
All of those tiny particles that are close to you, their angle of resolution is less than 2%, so you can't see them. But excuse me, they're there, and over distance, more and more and more and more of them add up and block your view.
I can't even see the sun anymore on a cloudless day due to chemtrails, for crying out loud. So.
Number 15, is the flat Earth a religious thing? If it was, I wouldn't have been here.
Me too. I'll second that. But yeah, most people have they assume that it all comes from religious stuff, religious text, and that's the only reason people believe it is because it's a doctrine in their book. But we have to clarify that not only does many ancient texts and religious texts back up and support the flat Earth, but you go out on your own and you don't have to be a Christian or a Muslim or anything like that. And you could go test this stuff for yourself, find that there's no curvature, no motion to be had out here.
Yeah. Yeah. The way I look at the religion as it pertains to flat Earth is it's kind of like dependent upon my audience. If I'm talking to someone who is a devout Christian, then yeah, I might start throwing in a couple of those pieces of evidence that are circumstantial, I know, but from the Bible, the talks of the firmament and the stationary, immovable earth, because it does match up with the flat Earth theory. But if I'm talking to someone who's not religious, I've got to be sure that I can explain thoroughly and defend this flat Earth without the use of anything religious, because that's what they're waiting on. They're waiting on us to be a religious nutcase.
I'll take it a little further. Oh, good. Sorry, thought you were done.
No, I was just say, and the thing with the flat Earth is I can explain, lay the points out, and defend the flat Earth without even touching religion. Just with science and empirical evidence, and so that's how I leave it. I leave it out unless I'm talking to someone who is into that, and then I'll point out the consistencies.
I do everything I can to leave it out because I was that guy, no matter what I was listening to and how much I like something. If they brought up religion in any way, shape, or form, I discredited everything that I've heard. I tune out and I don't come back because I say they're religious fanatics, even though what they said, now that I look at it, makes a lot of sense. And I know that there's a lot of me's out there. There's a lot of people that think that same way. And have been indoctrinated to not even be willing to look. But once I discovered the true nature of our world, that we are not a random speck, there is some intelligent design here, or all intelligent design, however you want to look at it. And I try not to label it, because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to reach the people that are just like me. And there's a lot of them out there, because I don't need to tell them about the creator side of this. They can figure it out for themselves once they realize where they don't live and where they do live, because that has to come to you on your own. And that's fine. And then once they do, there's other people like Rob Skiba and Robbie Davidson and and all sorts of other people out there, Mike Helmick, that are heavy on the Bible stuff. And again, if you told me 3 years ago I'd be listening to guys talking from a biblical side that the earth is flat, I would have just laughed you out of my life. I mean, not even out of the room, out of my life. And now I recommend people go there. I love listening. Whenever Robbie puts up a new video, I'm like one of the first people listening if I can. How about you, ODD?
Yeah, I love those guys. I have nothing against religion, I guess I could say that I do have something against religion, but not spirituality and not all of the things that are taught through these religious texts, because I've delved into them myself. I find a lot of things to be true. I find others to be ridiculous. I have my own assumptions where I talk to one of my Christian friends and I turn out to be wrong with my assumption, and he schools me on how even many Christians are feeling the same way that I am when it comes to that. They're not religious. They're like, I don't go to church. I'm not religious. I am a Christian. I follow Christ, stuff like that. And I'm still having a hard time with some of that stuff, but I definitely don't, I won't push anybody away for it. And since the flat earth came into my life, especially because I was the same way as you, Dave, and I was anything religious, I'd laugh and I wouldn't even listen. But now I find myself entertaining it more and finding more truth within. But of course, these things have been tampered with and changed over the course of history because everything is tainted nowadays.
Sure
Absolutely. Number 16 is the Flat Earth Society behind the resurgence of the Flat Earth.
Absolutely not. The Flat Earth Society is what we're all assumed to be. Am I wrong? Like, anytime I'm talking to people that have never heard of this stuff, they're like, oh, you're a Flat Earth Society member? I heard they have members all around the globe, and they start laughing. And I'm like, it's one of those problems where they assume that we're part of the Flat Earth Society. But that place has obviously been propped up just to give us some faulty answers, especially about gravity, because that one will throw people off. It says that the earth is rising at such a rate and it makes up for gravity. And that's one thing that, go ahead.
There's people have different, a lot of flat earth researchers have different ideas, the infinite plane versus the dome. But we all know that we don't live on a ball. I encourage people to go to the Flat Earth Society and learn what no flat earther believes. The only people that believe that stuff are ballers that think flat earthers believe that, but I can't think of one that believes anything on that site.
I find it funny.
I mean, they probably have a couple things, but I haven't gone there. But the main things they push out there are nonsense.
Yep, and I find it really ironically funny that if I rewind myself back, say 5 years ago. I had never heard of the flat earth information that we're hearing now. Hadn't even stumbled upon a video. It just wasn't out there. However, for years, I've heard of the Flat Earth Society, and it's only been via presidential speeches or jokes in movies. I mean, it's been out there. The words Flat Earth Society, I've heard that for years. In fact, when I first stumbled upon the Flat Earth Theory, it's probably one of the first things that came in my head, the Flat Earth Society. But how telling is it that we never heard of the Flat Earth Society from Flat Earth Society themselves? We never heard a story about the Flat Earth Society is doing this educational event. We never heard of any of that. All we heard was Flat Earth Society joke. Flat Earth Society joke. Tell me that's not suspicious as hell.
I remember listening to Johnny Carson show, and they had the president of the Flat Earth Society on, and he tells this harrowing story where his ship went over the edge of the flat earth, and he grabbed on, and he almost went over, but he grabbed on to this rock that saved his life, and he holds up his hand, and he has the rock that saved his life from going over the edge of the earth in his hand. And they talked about that, and I remember that from a kid. And it was a total, it was totally to make us realize that flat earth is ridiculous.
Yeah, ridicule. We equate it with crazy and stupid.
Yeah, and I remember that being on, I believe it was Johnny Carson.
Oh, we need to find that clip. It's got to be out there.
That's actually a good idea. We should try to find that.
Following announcement has been paid for by
The Flat Earth Podcast.
The Flat Earth Conference 2017 takes place this November from Raleigh, North Carolina. Tickets are sold out right now, but visit their website and get on the waiting list.
Or just head down. There's lots of people heading down to an adjacent hotel where they'll be live streaming in an auditorium and lots of outside stuff happening. A big Flat Earth hangout.
And if you want to contribute to the massive Flat Earth billboard that's going up down in Raleigh, North Carolina, head over to the website, flatearthpodcast.com, click on the link that sends you over to the billboard campaign.
The billboard is 14 feet tall by 48 feet wide. It'll be the biggest Flat Earth billboard to date. It'll be running for a month up before the conference and ending the Sunday after the conference.
Head over to fe2017.com now.
The Flat Earth
Podcast.
And if you are coming down to the Flat Earth Conference in November, on Wednesday, the day before, we're going to be kicking off the conference with a gathering at the Flat Earth Billboard, which is just 2.5 miles from the conference center. We're going to have hundreds of people there. We're going to have a drone up filming us. We're going to be live streaming it to all of the different media across the plane, and we'll be interviewing people during it that'll be going out over the live stream. Be part of that. You don't even have to have a ticket to the show. Just join us and listen for more information here on the Flat Earth Podcast.
The Flat Earth
Podcast.
All right, what's next?
Number 17, are all scientists, pilots, and members of the government in on it? Another one of my favorite questions.
Me too. You could definitely talk about this one go into great detail on a lot of things and what you believe. And what I believe personally is that, a lot of scientists absolutely believe the Earth is a spinning ball. A lot of pilots absolutely believe it. Many of the government have been duped into it. It's just, not everybody's. Just because they're maybe helping to further the deception doesn't mean that they're knowingly doing so. So I think that they're kept compartmentalized in even places like NASA, so much so that even NASA employees on the lower levels are completely oblivious to this lie.
Yeah, the NASA guy that I did the podcast with, the top 10 list of things that we want to see science prove. He wanted to do another show, and I said, "Yeah, let's do a show where you show us your top 10 proofs the Earth is a ball." And he said, "All right, let me look into it." That was a month ago. Haven't heard from him.
Wow.
And I was like, you know what? Maybe you shouldn't shoot for 10. Just give me one.
My dad's a perfect example of this as far as, not having to have people, quote unquote, in on it. My dad was a civil engineer for years and was in charge of multiple projects where they would have to lay pipeline across a country for hundreds of miles, across the deserts and through mountains and everything else. And when I introduced this topic to him, I said, Dad, in all your years of laying these pipelines for hundreds of miles, did you guys ever have to factor in the curvature of the Earth? And he was just silent. I could see him thinking, and he said, no, not at all. He said, all we did was factored in the distance and the topography. How long do we need to go? How many pieces of pipe do we need? And then obviously if the land goes up, we got to go up with it. If it goes down, we got to go down with it. And I said, so if there was a natural curve at 8 inches per mile squared, you guys would surely have to factor that into your pipelining. And he said, yeah. And I said, so in college, when you're learning this, or when you joined up with a company, and you're there on your first few days, do you know of anyone ever raising their hand to ask this question? No, it just didn't come to them. They didn't even think of it because we're all just taught, since an early age that the globe is so big, but we don't have to factor it in because we're small like little ants. So it's a perfect example of someone that you would think would obviously catch on to the fact that we're not using the curvature of the Earth to lay these pipes across a country, but yet it never crossed the minds of any of them.
Yeah, there's a video by Dave Sims who had me put it on my channel where he discovered Gerard Hickson, I think is the name, who was challenging astronomers back 100 years ago, and he was actually putting up billboards. Did you guys see that video?
Yeah.
He put up a billboard saying, "Is Beetlejuice big? I think not." And the way he explains it is he says that somebody said Beetlejuice was big, and then they taught the next generation that, and that generation taught the next generation, and they just keep telling each other the same thing, but nobody has any proof. And that's how it goes. So there are astronomers that believe the nonsense.
Yeah, because the math all works out.
Yeah, you can make an equation that says that proves anything, but is it reality?
So no, they don't have to all be in on it. In fact, I think very few would.
Yeah, and some people some of the people that may actually know or have these questions refuse to come forward so they don't lose their career.
Right. What's the gain? If a pilot comes forward and says, "Oh my God, the Earth is flat," he's done. He's finished.
And prior to the flat Earth movement, with all these videos and everything out, all this information out there, go back 10 years ago, guys in flight school, he's sitting there. Let's just say it does cross his mind. Wait a minute. What about the curvature of the Earth? Is he going to raise his hand and say that? No, he's going to internalize that for a few minutes, and then he's probably going to dismiss it as, "Oh no, self, you're crazy." You know what I mean? You'd have to actually think of it, which no one does. B, you'd have to be the type that doesn't keep that to yourself and then raise your hand and ask about it. It's just so unlikely that anyone in any of these fields would stumble upon it, or especially would do something about it.
Yeah, that's
Agreed.
true.
All right, number 18. NASA isn't the only space agency. Are all the others in on it?
Short answer, yes.
Short answer, yes.
So right after saying that all these people don't have to be in on it, the answer to this one is yes.
well, I look at it like all of, like the Cold War. The Cold War was nonsense. Kim Jong-un in North Korea, it's nonsense. It's all fake, fake rivalries. All of these space agencies, they've all been linked with the same symbology, with their vector symbols. They're all just lying. And, the elite run these space agencies, and the elite know the truth about where we are. Crow 777 says, who are these elite? And he says they could be identified as a different race, because they've known the truth for generation after generation after generation. And they've are different than we are at this point.
Yeah, this one, to me, when we say NASA and other space agencies like JAXA, the agency as a whole is only as good as the head of that agency. So no, not everybody in every agency is in on it.
Right.
But since whoever's running these agencies, the upper echelons and the people that make up the upper echelons are the people that are in on it. And we could just see that they're all in on it based on what they're dishing out. And we get animations from all of them. They're all animations from each and every single one of them. The Himawari satellite, the JAXA Earthrise, and even different size and inconsistencies with the size of the Earth from the moon. JAXA has one from the moon where the Earth is, you compare it to NASA's Earthrise, and the Earth is two totally different sizes that are completely inconsistent. Yep. And they're easy to see that they're animated. So, but not only that, my favorite part about this video when we go into that is showing that all the space agencies of the world, not all, but pretty much very close to almost all of them, they share the vector symbol
right.
in their logos. And the vector symbol, for those listening, it just looks like a V or a kind of a triangle. And they basically chop it up to it being the first airplane, the hydrosonic airplane from the 50s or something like that. Mm-hmm. But they all have this logo. And another thing that helps you see this deception is the Antarctic Treaty, where all these nations are signed on and willing to keep peace over Antarctica. But it's all... So it shows that we could tie our space programs into uniformity. But everything else, the world is a stage. Why would we be all trying to go to war with each other, but we're all going to sign on and totally never defy this treaty that's for Antarctica?
Well, and the treaty for space, the unspoken treaty of space as well. They're all on the same page, like you said, with space. And I was going to say, too, that for anyone listening to this podcast, if you haven't, obviously we mentioned this at the top of the show, and we've mentioned this on many episodes. If you haven't seen ODD's video, 21 Questions, you need to go watch it. But for, if you just need one reason, it's this question, because the video does a great job when he explains the vector symbology of showing those clips, and it really is a visual that hits home. And if for no other reason, go watch it for this particular one right here.
Awesome. Number 19. Who's responsible for this deception?
Who done it?
Who done it? The more I look into it, the more it leads right back to the Jesuits.
I was going to say Obama.
Yeah. Of course. Obama and the Jesuits. That's our official answer.
Yeah, Obama's probably a Jesuit. But the thing is that I made a video about 2 months ago called The History of Outer Space. And that's what really changed things for me because, I like to, of course, there's many, many people in different groups and think tanks and stuff like that can be called out for all sorts of the deceptions that actually tie into this grand deception. But when you're looking at this grand deception and trying to track down who done it, you find that the Jesuits were the first to start incorporating this heliocentric model, pushing it in the church, the surrounding schools, and they were actively going to different countries, passing out telescopes and telling people about the heliocentric model and how it, everything that we think of today when we think of it.
That's some real forward thinking on their part. You got to give them credit, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
I have a hard time getting people to organize for 2 months from now. That's a real long term.
Yeah, and there's been people for decades that have put forth the idea that, but prior to Flat Earth, that the Jesuits had infiltrated the Catholic Church.
Yes,
and had pretty much taken over that. And so it does lend credibility when you go back and you look at guys like Copernicus, Galileo, Newton, and you see that they were all commissioned by the Catholic Church to do their work. And, so it does create, they say where there's smoke, there's fire. It certainly creates a lot of smoke.
Wow. Everything is a lie. All right.
Right?
And number 20, why the lie?
They want you to feel like you don't matter and that you're very insignificant. Where you live is insignificant. And you just it ties into wanting to basically make you live your life out okay with being the slave that because it's noticeable that you're a slave on this world where you have to go to work, and you don't get to go drive your car without a license. You can't go out of the country without getting permission. There's just so much that show you that you're a slave. But they've made it okay for us to be slaves because in the end it doesn't matter anyway. We live on an insignificant ball, and we ourselves are insignificant.
There's one of the big lines in one of the movies I like that explains it is, "There's nothing else to discover, Truman. It's all been discovered." That's it.
Yeah.
So, if we know that there's more out there, there's no stopping humans. We want to know what's on the other side of that fence. But if you think you live on a ball and it's all been discovered, you kind of become docile. It's like, who did the analysis of the when you get a pet hamster or a mouse and you put him in his cage, the first thing he does is he runs all around, looks for an exit, says, "Okay, that's it. This is where I am," and he just becomes content.
Right. The way I say it is if you can accept the fact that we are over-regulated to the point of slavery, like not literal slaves, but over-regulated in everything we do, like ODD just mentioned. And that's not hard for a lot of people to accept in this day and age. But if you can accept that, then I just say that, as far as the why, well, yeah, they've imprisoned us with all their regulation, but they've also built the imaginary fence around us. And that's the globe. It's an imaginary fence. What better way to keep us from going outward or going wherever they don't want us to go than to tell us it's a ball and you can't even go there. You can't. It's a ball.
Yeah, the ball puts an end. It just ends everything. You tie it up on the bottom, make it a ball, and then there's nothing else past that anymore.
Nothing to see here, folks.
All right, and number 21, what's it mean if the earth is flat? That's one that everybody asks.
Yeah, I'll go first again. To me, I've been really thinking about this a lot, and it's so serious. A lot of us don't get how serious this actually is. I mean, they are lying to us about where we live and what this is and everything else about history. It's scary to me to really think about, what this actually means. But I mean, besides from the obvious, which we were created, this place was created, and there is purpose for each and every one of us. But the bottom line is they are lying, and we're on to them. And it's almost like, will anything even be done if we wake enough people up and start protesting? Is anything going to change? I say yes, and I want to keep going forward. But it is scary how much control they have over us, the fact that they've lied to us about this.
Yeah, and my answer is always kind of dependent upon who I'm talking to when they ask this question. But, certainly if the person does have a religious background, it's like, this is important to me because, they've lied to us about our existence, about our creation, about everything. And it really just changes the way you think about life in general. But if they're not into that, or if they can't accept the fact that I just want the truth, I'll tell them another truth. And that is, I got kids. And my kids I'm watching them go to school, and I'm watching them being taught something that is just an out and out lie. It's not true. And they're being taught this as a truth, as a fact. And they're being taught that it's silly to even question these things. And damn it pisses me off. And, so that's my reason why.
If they're lying to me, they're lying to my kids.
Yeah.
My kids, the Flat Earth Man sang that. That was the best line in his first song. He's like, if they're lying to me, they're lying to my kids. And he got all pissed. I'm like, that was the best line.
Yeah, and that echoes my sentiments 100%. I'm like, maybe the person I'm talking to does or doesn't have kids, but I'm like, for me, man, I got little ones, and they're experiencing the primitive kindergarten, first, second grade years right now, and I'm watching them come home with this stuff, and I'm just, it's driving me nuts. So to me, that's why it's important. I want to find out the truth, and I investigated because I wanted to know for sure if I was being lied to. Now I am. And so, damn it, it's important. I don't know what I'm going to do about it yet with the kids, but going forward, we're very careful. We don't tell them, hey, kids, the earth is flat, but we tell them, that's what science thinks. And
I'll tell them.
Yeah, right. Don't let them talk to Uncle David.
Let me get near your kids. I'll straighten them out.
I know you will.
When people say, what does it matter? I just think that you're not thinking, it matters so much, because if you don't know where you are, you don't know who you are, you don't know what you are, and how can you progress in life, not being lost? Believing you live on a spinning ball is disorienting, and it disconnects you from your true power.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, yeah, such a great list of questions. And hopefully on the podcast here, we tried to provide some audio answers, but we definitely have to recommend everybody to go watch the video if you haven't. I know tons of our listeners have probably seen it and actually have referred other people to it. But those of you who haven't, check it out, because it is so well done, so well made, and it's something that you can digest and then send on to other people as well. But
I've lost track how many times I've watched it, because I watch the ODD reality 24/7 live feed, and it comes on there. And whenever I don't go, oh, I've seen that, I get stuck. I'm like watching it. I'm like, oh man, I can't get out. Yeah. And it really traps you, because when you start listening to it, you just have to keep going.
I got a question for ODD real quick off the 21 questions subject. So I finally got around about 4 weeks ago to listening fully to your album, the most recent one.
Uh-huh.
And it's awesome. I'm a kind of an old school rap guy, but I freaking loved it. I was so impressed because, anybody in the music industry, when an artist decides to do a concept album where all the songs are going to mean something towards this one message, the record industry always goes, no, you don't want to do that. It never works. But I was so shocked at how well it worked, man. You got different styles of songs, different, all with one message, but different messages within. It's really, really, is that on iTunes right now? Or where can people get the album itself?
Yeah, it's called Never Sleep Again. I just go by ODD TV, odd TV, but ODD TV will work. Never Sleep Again. It's on iTunes. You could listen to it on Spotify, and that even collects a little revenue for me. And I put it on SoundCloud, so you could download individual tracks for free. And on the video I made a video for the full album. It's just audio, but within the description, it has pretty much all the places you could get it, and there's even physical copies available, which look absolutely great. They came out good, and yeah, I'm very excited about the album. And after the conference in November, when I get back, I'm gonna start sitting down and working on a new one.
Oh, good. Well, I was super impressed, man. I was blown away at how good it was, and just to show how I wasn't paying attention, I've listened to it twice via the YouTube video that you put out, with the whole album. Mm-hmm. And then later on, I went to iTunes and I tried to buy it, but I put in ODD Reality and nothing came up, and never did I think to look at the comments. So that was bad on me.
Yeah, it's all good. I'm still, sooner or later, people will figure it out. But going through the process I did, putting it on CD Baby, where they distributed it to iTunes, Amazon, all the places you could purchase digital and some physical. Doing that actually made me I pop up in some sort of Google search as a musical artist. It's pretty cool. I thought that was nice. So I want to start adding more albums to under my belt and keep working on these things. It had a profound effect on the listeners, because this is you can't refute. You could turn that on for somebody and they'll be like, what the heck are you listening to? But they can't argue with it. They can only think to themselves, is this idea so much so big that people are making full musical albums about it? They're painting art about it. They're putting on film festivals about it. There's just so much that flat earthers are doing that it's such a great thing. And I think adding my music to it was my contribution. And I think everybody should try to get creative and add their own touch. Yeah,
it just showed up. I searched ODD TV instead, and it just showed up. So you got one more purchase right here. I just clicked buy.
It's amazing how many great, songs are coming out about the flat earth. I don't know any other, psyop or trending anything that's generated this much music and interest.
Yeah. I mean, look at YouTube alone. Just the fact that so many people have created so many videos. It's unbelievable what people are doing.
There's almost 19 million.
Yeah, I mean, it's absurd. And so, yeah, if you haven't listened to it, I'm telling you firsthand, I'm an old school rap guy, and I loved it top to bottom. I really did. I wanted to tell you that on the show itself, man. It's a great album. Great work.
Thanks, brother. 16 years in the making, man. Been making music my whole life. Finally started making conscious material, and can't turn back. I can't even pick up a pen without writing. It has to have a message behind it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Nice.
Awesome. See how it's changed his world? There you go. How does it affect you? See there?
Flat Earth changes everybody for the better.
Perfect example right there.
For the better.
All right. Well, ODD, where can they find you?
Odd Reality on YouTube, and I'll pop up. I have a 24/7 live feed, and always a place to hang out and talk with other flat earthers, and also debate globe earthers.
It's always it's always fun to set people's homepages to the ODD Reality live feed page. That way, when they open up their internet browser, it starts playing.
That's awesome.
It's a little aggressive, but it's kind of fun to do sometimes.
Yeah, we need to do that next time we go to the Apple Store. Just go to all the devices and throw it on there as the homepage.
No doubt.
That's actually a great idea.
It sure is. All right, guys, we'll catch you next week. And ODD, please, anytime you want, feel free to join us on the podcast, brother.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll catch you next week, folks.
Just a part of a story that might not ever even end. Oh no, how can it be? This world is testing me. Won't give up readily. This is my destiny. I won't quit till my heart stops ticking. Searching for the part that's missing. Seeking truth, I'm on a mission. I can see, I got that vision. In debt, your payments past due. Your life just races past you. Wake up, the Matrix has you. Wake up, the Matrix has you. We are enslaved like cattle, held back with chains and shackles. Wake up, the Matrix has you. Wake up, the Matrix has you. There is a